What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Coffee and Questions podcast. Today is kind of feels like a nostalgia episode for me. This is a gentleman who, as soon as I say his name, everyone will know exactly who he is. But him and I have become really good friends over the last year. We got to finally meet in person last August, and it's really just been the easiest friendship, and someone who I highly respect in our industry and someone who we're going to have a really unique conversation around LinkedIn and Instagram and how those two things play hand in hand. But this gentleman is none other than the one and only James Duncan, as current SVP of Marketing and Brand at Lower.com, and my friend. Welcome, James.
Well, thank you very much, Michelle. I really appreciate the invite to be on and love your podcast, love what you're building, and love how you are transforming people's lives through your coaching. So kudos to you on that. Of
Thank you again for just saying yes to coming on. I mean,
course.
that's always the first step is like getting people to want to come on here and be with me. So I'm excited to have you. And for those that don't know you or those that are not familiar with you, can you tell me a little bit about your background prior
Sure.
to becoming who you are today? How did you start? And then what are you doing these days?
Well, I have been in the real estate and mortgage industry for approximately 20 years. Got my first jump into being in real estate, working for a custom home builder here in the Austin area back in 2005, and have held positions as a realtor. And about the only position that I haven't held in on either side of the transaction is title agent. And I've never been an escrow officer, so that's really about it. So I've got pretty well-traveled history in the industry and have seen a lot and done a lot. For the last 10 years or so, I've been the head of a marketing department, first with Thrive now and then with Lower. And over that course of time, I was able to draw on a lot of my past experience throughout my career. I was also had a 5 year stint as a public high school teacher. So there's just been a lot that has contributed to the vast amount of trivia and knowledge that's bouncing around in my brain. So that's kind of a quick digest on me. One of the things that I really geek out over is anything related to marketing, whether it's digital marketing, traditional marketing, outside billboards and signage and logos, all the conversations. I just geek out over all of it. So that's kind of where my expertise lies.
I think the evolution of marketing is something that we could really should talk about because
Absolutely.
if you think about it, you said billboards and the signs that we see outside, which that's how we grew up learning about marketing. Like even when I went to college, I got a degree in journalism and media studies. My first job out of college, which didn't pay much, was with Bleacher Report writing online articles. But my senior year before that, like before going into the workforce, quote unquote, right?
Hmm.
My senior year, our final thesis project, if you will, we had to get published in a newspaper, like in a printed newspaper, in order to pass
Wow.
our class, and that wasn't that long ago. That was in 2012 that I graduated from college. So really
Hmm.
wasn't that long ago if you really think about that. And I think it's interesting because even all of my college courses were all everything was print advertising. Like Twitter was the only thing that was really cool and new.
Yeah.
Facebook kinda.
Hmm.
So tell me from your perspective, let's talk evolution of marketing. Where was it when you started? And
Hmm.
what do you see? Are there similarities? Are there things that have changed? Obviously, aside from the tech, but as far as the what should I actually do to create impact, has that
Hmm.
really changed?
Yeah. It has changed in a lot of significant ways. It has also stayed the same in a lot of significant ways. Back when I first started my career, so I'm sufficiently older than you. Just were you saying that Twitter was a thing when you were in college? That really dates me by a lot because when I was in college, Yellow Pages was a thing. Like the internet was just kind of getting built. But it's the things that have changed. Obviously, we hear it all the time. We got AI this, AI that, and all the different systems, all of these things where you can hire somebody to have access to a platform to run all of your paid ad campaigns. I mean, digital marketing is clearly one of the biggest evolutions, but what hasn't changed is the personal relationship part of building your business and that personal touch that you establish with your clients and with whether you also engage with setting up partnerships with referral partners. whether those are realtors or financial planners or attorneys, whoever it happens to be. There still has to be that component of that personal touch and that personal and building that personal relationship. And that's just something that is very difficult to do the way that most people manage their social media strategies. And I know that we're going to dive real deep into this in a minute, but I'd say that I don't think that I don't believe that AI is going to replace that personal touch or that human touch, because I saw a report recently that 10 years ago, maybe it was 15 years ago, but it was a relatively recent stretch of time that I think the number was 74 or 70% of prospective home buyers found the professionals that they worked with in the agency through referrals from family, referrals from friends, referrals from one of the sides of the transaction. In 2024, they did another analysis again, and they found that that number, you would think, with all the advents of technology, you would think that that number would go down, correct? It went up. It went up to 84%.
Oh my God.
So that tells me, despite all the technological advances that we've had over the last 10 years, personal relationships still matter to consumers, especially when you're talking about something as an investment that's as big as buying a home. I
Yeah.
mean, we're not talking about a pair of sneakers. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of asset that will appreciate over time. So it's an important decision.
I think it's honestly scary. Like you were saying, internet was becoming a thing. And I remember even when I was little, like the first computer that my
Mhm.
parents bought for our house and how big it was,
Yep.
like literally how deep it was. It was like, I remember the first like Apple computer, even when it came out, and it was so heavy and just
Yep.
like cumbersome to put in our office. So we had this massive desk that was super deep in order to fit this ginormous computer.
Hmm.
And I just can't fathom in my mind sometimes how much has changed technologically in such a short amount of time. I mean, the thought of having or going back to my BlackBerry or to my Razor that I had in high school, I'm like, what would we do without our iPhones?
Yeah.
It's almost like just wild to me. And even with social, the things that I feel like change daily, right? Instagram's changing daily. I mean, with everything going on with TikTok, with LinkedIn, I've definitely spent a lot more time on LinkedIn in the last 6 months or so.
Yep.
And we'll talk a lot about that today because you're really an expert there, where that's something that I'm really trying to figure out for myself. Um,
Hmm.
but to your point, what really hasn't changed despite all of these things is what we're doing right now. Just two people actually talking, breaking bread, figuring out, hey, what's working for you, what's working for me. And also, I think in our world, frankly, especially in the mortgage and real estate space, there's so much bad. I'm going to just say this out loud. There's so much bad, right? There's so many people who are taking advantage of people, the money situation that we're facing, where people are just quite honestly just dramatically overcharging. I was going to use a different word, but I'm trying to be careful with my words. But it's just bad. It's really sad. And
Yeah.
so I think that's where the relationship side comes into play. But I
Hmm.
also think people are downplaying the value or the effort they should be putting in to create and then maintain the relationships. Because I think that some of the people at the top, like if you look at the list of the top people that are doing the most volume of loans, how many of
Hmm.
them are actually still one to one creating genuine relationships the way that they should?
Hmm.
I don't think very many.
I would say when it comes to if you're talking about like the top 1% of, let's say, originators or realtors,
Both.
that they still understand. I would argue that they still understand the importance of that face-to-face consulting. But what they've done that they've been then allowed that has allowed them to really expand and multiply their impact to a wider audience and hence drive more transactions is they've systematized a lot of the manual parts of that process, the phone calls. They have people on their team that will set appointments for them. They've got a really dialed in website with the appropriate calls to action in the right places. They've got a newsletter. They've got all of these intentional things to help with the with kind of what I would refer to as a hub and spoke marketing strategy, where you've got that centralized hub, which would be the top producer, the actual human being loan originator or realtor. And they've got all these spokes going out there to capture the attention of people who they don't know yet. and get them into their sphere. And then once that happens, once they're able to capture that information, then they've got everything systematized so that they're not the ones who are having to make every single return phone call or send every single email. They leverage the dialers, they leverage their CRM and the automated drip campaigns that they may have built or somebody helped them build. And so they're using all of these little things that are just quick little touch points. But when it comes to the actual advice that they give, then they are the ones that are front and center on a video call like what we're doing right now, or they're coming to their office and they're scheduling that 30 to 45-minute break for us to really go and dive in to whatever mortgage strategy as a loan officer I'm going to be advising my clients on, or finding out the details of what your dream home looks like if you're a realtor, and doing all the things that require a little bit more of that intensive, I guess you could say, feel good, kind of warm fuzzy type of a meeting where they really need your expertise as to what you're doing. Everything else, they've got a system for it. And I think, and you and I are in our worlds, I think are the exact same way, because you've got systems yourself. Somebody that wants to come meet with you and get coaching, well, you've got a system in place for how they get to actually being on a phone call with you. And I mean, I'm sure your phone rings off the hook, but
All day.
you're like me. I don't answer every single call every time it pops up. And I've got a voicemail message that tells them exactly what to do if
Mhm.
there's somebody and they want to connect with me, how to get into the best way to get in touch with me and get on my radar so that I can schedule an appointment and really have that intentional time focusing on how I can solve your problems.
Yeah, I just want to speak to 100%. I agree with you. And their systems are everything. Systems are die, right? Like, I mean, truthfully, you don't
Yeah.
scale a company, you don't scale anything for that matter, whether you're in the real estate or mortgage space or not, which 97% of people listening to this are going to be either an LO or a realtor.
Yep.
But you have those outlier people, and I'll tell them the same thing. Like you can't automate yourself out of it to the point where you yourself are not involved in the relationships themselves, right?
Exactly right.
And
If you want your name on it, you got to be involved.
and that's where, to me, right, I think systematizing is everything for sure, but you also can't take yourself out of it to the point where your automation feels like automation to me as the
Right.
consumer, right? And one
100%.
of my pet peeves on this one specifically is when you don't, two things. One, you don't answer your own DMs. So if I send a message on Instagram, I'm dead serious, right? Like, and I say this, I don't care how busy I am. If you send me a DM, I am the one returning the message. And I do not think that you can ever delegate that to someone and expect the same result as if it were you. You just can't. That's
Agree.
one. Email marketing is something that I work very, very hard on internally within my own organization so that
Hmm.
it doesn't feel like an automated drip campaign where there's no personality and there's no Michelle in it. Uh,
Hmm.
and I got a call. I had a call yesterday with someone, and he mentioned to me, he's like, Michelle, when I get your emails, I can tell that you wrote them. Like there's so much energy and like passion in them that I can totally tell that you wrote that. And to me, right, the hour and a half to 2 hours it took me to write 5 or 6 emails that are in a drip campaign because someone downloaded something, that comment or that conversation I had with that gentleman telling me
Hmm.
that is so worth my hour to 2 hours that it took me to make those, because
Hmm.
guarantee he's going to become a client.
Hmm. Absolutely
But
right.
I do think people automate themselves out of emails.
Hmm.
I know we're not technically talking about emails right now, but it just felt relevant, or for the sake of like the big conversation or bigger conversation that we want to have. But
Absolutely.
you deal with a lot of this on the inside. So what do you say to someone when they just want to plug into an automated email drip campaign that's already built for them?
Sure. I think that there are ways to leverage that for 100%. But to kind of double down on the point that you were just making, you basically just answer that question. There has to be a component, at least at least 50% of the time. There has to be a component where it is genuinely you. It's your authentic voice. It is you communicating in your cadence, in the tone of voice that you speak. If you're a client of mine sitting across the table from me. Like there's a certain way that I would speak that AI will never get.
Mhm.
Well, never say never, but hasn't yet
At least not
understood
yet.
how to do. Despite how good you get at setting up a prompt, it's not going to be a replacement for you. And so, I mean, the point that you were just making is a case study on how to be intentional about the business that you're setting up. Now, if I'm out there selling tchotchkes or something on Amazon or eBay or something like that, well, then that's less of a there's less of a necessity for me to have that personal touch and to answer every request that comes through. I'll have a team for that. But when we're talking about services where we are the intention of why we establish the businesses that we lead, if our intention is to connect with people on a very personal level, then you have to infuse your personality into your outgoing communication. Now, that does not mean that you have to, if you want to set up a 270 step drip campaign that's going to go for the next 18 months, that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be the copywriter on every single step and have to go in and build it yourself. Like, absolutely leverage the resources that you have at the ready, whether it's your own marketing division at your own company or somebody who's an expert that you can outsource it to. But the content that gets created in that drip campaign has to sound like you. Otherwise, it's going to fall flat and you're wasting your time and you're wasting your audience's time, who are the ones receiving the message, because to your point, Michelle, they know it's not you. They can sniff that out in a heartbeat.
Well, I mean, I've been on the receiving end of it, right? As a homeowner myself, my husband and I just bought our fifth house a little under 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and or fourth house, excuse me. And I mean, honestly, the drips, like the emails that you get, you're just like, did they completely ignore or did they just miss all of the conversations that we had with them on the phone?
Right.
Right? Like, so my point is the email we would get, you can clearly tell that it doesn't include or hasn't been updated based off the conversation that was had on the phone, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
based off of the messages that have been exchanged, whether however that was being communicated. And I think that little effort, that tiny little effort to just make that change will make a massive difference. And then I told this story on a coaching call, but I'll tell you, I'll say it out loud because I think you'll laugh. And anybody who's watching James and I, like, you'll see us laugh right now because this is how bad automating yourself out of something can really be when it plays out. So my house anniversary was in June, this past June, for 1 year. We'll be coming up on 2 years here this year. But on our 1 year house anniversary, we got a letter in the mail, like a card in the mail from our lender that we used to buy the house. And mind you, we are in Clarksville, Tennessee. That's where my husband and I live.
Mm-hmm.
And the lender's corporate office was in Oklahoma, this particular one.
Okay.
So we get this letter in the mail. I open it, and in it is a gift card for coffee, right? Awesome. I love
Sweet.
coffee. I'm
Mm-hmm.
a big coffee drinker for sure.
Okay.
I get this gift card, I flip it over, and on the back of it, it says must be used at XYZ. There were 3 locations, and all 3 of them were in Oklahoma. And
Road trip.
yeah, right. Far to get a $5 free cup of coffee. And so what did I do? I screenshotted it and I sent it to the loan officer that we used. And I said, I appreciate the sentiment, but whoever sent this out really should have done the research to know that I clearly live in Clarksville, Tennessee. And to get to this coffee shop is approximately a 7.5 hour drive. I'm
Right.
good.
Yeah.
I got this big long text message after that. And the next morning I had a $50 gift card to one of the nicest coffee shops here in Clarksville in downtown for me to use. But I had that conversation with her and I said, you got to get involved in this. You have to
Yeah.
say to whoever's putting these in on an envelope,
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, you got to look up the address of this person and what state do they live in, and then doing the little bit of research. And yeah, that's going to take you five more minutes per person, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to do the research. So let's say you're sending 10 of these out a day,
Mm-hmm.
instead of it taking 10 minutes total because you're putting the same gift card in all 10 of them, it's taking you 50 minutes because you're giving yourself 5 minutes per person. But
Mm-hmm.
the impact, what is the impact? And is the impact or the juice worth the squeeze? And that's crazy to me. Like, it's crazy to me that that's not being done. And I don't know. I have a hard time with automation. It really can, I think it can be done well. I think it can be done really poorly.
Yeah.
Case in point.
Exactly. And I will say this, the response to you calling that out, the response was A plus. That
Absolutely.
was the way to handle that situation instead of saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Just feel free to mail it back." And that's the end of the conversation.
Mhm.
Then that loan officer just lost you as a client forever. But
Yep.
the way that she handled it and getting you that and going above and beyond, like how much was on the gift card, the first gift card that you got?
$5, one free
$5.
coffee.
So
Yeah.
they did a 10x, like, thank you very much for calling that out. That is the right way to manage your reputation. Now, would it have been better for that loan officer to make sure ahead of time before the first one went out? Yeah, sure. But you know what? They're busy, and she learned a valuable lesson, and now she's going to change that process. So you helped both the corporate office understand something, and the whoever the corporate marketing people are, or whoever's responsible for sending those out. You help them adjust their process, and you just taught that loan officer a very, very valuable lesson. So
Yeah.
it's not just, I mean, we're human, we're going to make mistakes. So when a client calls something out like that, you've got two ways to address it. She did it the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I told her that, and I was very humbled by her reaction.
Yep.
And she said she has, a lot of respect for who I am and what I do, and the fact that I had the audacity to tell her. She was like, most people wouldn't, and the fact that you did means a lot. So I was really excited about that. But
Yep.
to your point, again, it's public relations at that point. Are you managing your image or are you not? But
Correct.
I want to shift gears for just a second and go on a new path here, because one of the things that I really, really want to talk about is LinkedIn versus Instagram. And
Okay.
the reason this is such a powerful conversation that I think we're about to have or get into is I get asked this all the time, Michelle, should I be on Instagram? Should I be on LinkedIn? Should I be on Facebook? Like, I don't have any Instagram presence at all, but I'm on LinkedIn, or like vice versa, right?
Hmm.
And what I want to talk about is because even me, right, as a newbie or a newer newbie, if you will, to LinkedIn, I
Sure.
prospect on LinkedIn every single day, just like I prospect on Instagram every single day. So prospecting is, to me, I mean, that's who I am. That is who Michelle is. Everybody knows that I'm the prospecting person when it comes
Right.
to how to create leverage through social platforms. But you
Hmm.
do it through LinkedIn masterfully. So
Thank you.
can we talk about what does prospecting on LinkedIn even mean to you? And if someone's listening, how would it be different potentially than what I do or what I tell them to do on Instagram?
I've said this before to a big room full of people listening for whatever reason, listening to me pontificate from a stage. I said it is not the platform that matters. It is the strategy and the intentionality that you employ that matters to leveraging that platform that matters. So I just butchered it. It was supposed to come out a lot smoother than that. But anyway, I mean, you get the point. My intentions for the reason why I am very light in my experience on Instagram is because it's not a platform that is best suited for me, not at this stage of my career anyway. The only thing that I'm pushing, I don't originate actively. I have in the past, but I don't now. The audience that I want to connect with is not on Instagram. The audience that I want to connect with are other marketing folks, other people that I can learn from, folks that I can connect with in terms of like sales leadership and that kind of stuff, and to influence them. They might be on Instagram, but they're not there for that kind of message. So my preferred platform is on LinkedIn because that's where the folks that I want to spend the bulk of my time communicating with reside or spend a good amount of their time. And watching how folks go about the process of prospecting, especially like let's just take loan officers for example, since that's my world. I can tell when a loan officer is just trying to check off a box and they've got this list of I need to be posting to these platforms multiple times throughout the course of the week. And I know when they are putting something out on their LinkedIn feed or on their profile that I can also find the exact same thing on Instagram and on Facebook and maybe even on X if they're proficient with doing business there. And it always makes me wince every time I see that, whether it's I don't care if it's a testimonial card or if it's some update about a loan program or what it might be very good content for them to post out there. And there's probably some folks that are going to disagree with me on this, and that's okay. But I don't think that LinkedIn is where most loan officers need to be prospecting for business because that's not where your home buying audience is. That's not where you're going to have the biggest influence. Those folks, they're the ones scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or any number of other consumer friendly purposes. Now, that's not to say you're not going to get deals if you are actively posting on LinkedIn. You absolutely can get home buyer leads or refinance leads or something of that nature. You can absolutely do that. But the strategy that most loan officers are employing is not a strategy that is built for LinkedIn. I'll give you an example. Let's say that I'm a loan officer and I make a post on LinkedIn about a recent closing that I had. And if I'm doing it the right way, and I know that you coach on this, that if I've done it the right way, then I have made the client the hero of that story rather than myself. And I'm telling the world why this is so significant. Then you should read this because this is what this particular borrower had to go through. Just illustrate all the previous objections they had. They were denied by 5 lenders, whatever the story happens to be. You're telling that story on Instagram. If you tell the same story on LinkedIn, you're gonna have to change it up. Instead of just copying and pasting the same caption copy and putting in the same cheesy photo with the client standing there with the keyboard or the cardboard cutout, instead of doing it the exact same carbon copy of what you have on another platform, change up the messaging, and say this is what it's like to work with me. And this is something that I posted on Instagram, and define why you're sharing that same Instagram post on LinkedIn. As this is especially critical for those of you who are branch managers or maybe regionals or something like that, and you are trying to build a team.
Yep.
Because there are other loan officers, there are other realtors that are going to LinkedIn who will see that on a consistent basis. And instead of trying to attract consumers, those are the folks that are going to see that content the most, and then they're going to want to gravitate to you, especially if you are busy in saying, hey, loan officers, if you want this kind of support, if you want these kind of tools, if you want this kind of interaction with our leadership and this kind of transparency or whatever the message happens to be, that's your recruiting message on LinkedIn. And if it's something that's a little bit more consumer focused, you're going to need to change the wording because the people that are there are expecting more of a B2B style message rather than a B2C message or a business to consumer message that you would otherwise find on Instagram or TikTok or one of the other platforms. So you just need to understand the purpose of why you're on that specific platform. Because if you're just looking to check off a box and you just want to post the same content and scattershoot across every single social media platform, it is not going to work for you. And you might get a hit every now and then, but it's not going to build any substantive business for you, and it's going to be a waste of your time.
No, it's just not a sustainable strategy without,
No.
like, it's something that might, to your point, you might get lucky here or there, but is it going to be something that you can say, hey, this is an arm of my business that's genuinely producing opportunity?
Right.
And I'll tell you, for me, like, I look at Instagram totally different than how I look at LinkedIn. 100%. I
Well,
prospect
you
on
should.
both of them, right? But the
Yeah.
way I look at LinkedIn is, hey, you're a SVP, you're a president, you're a director of sales for this mortgage company or for this real estate company, and you're
Mhm.
looking to bring somebody of value into your organization. That's what I'm on LinkedIn for, right?
Mhm.
Those are the types of conversations I'm having there. But on Instagram, it's the individual loan officer, it's the individual real estate agent, it's the small team that comes across me, or it's even like, the associations, some of the local associations that are like, hey, this girl could be really beneficial to do a training for my small, 20, 50 people, whatever the number is.
Mhm.
And so you have to put a different lens on when you're doing it. Now, I will tell you, I have some of my loan officers who are prospecting agents on LinkedIn, and I would
Excellent.
say that they're doing it pretty well.
Good.
The one thing I can tell you that's really important, and one of the strategies that I teach for that particular type of person is, hey, if you have a bunch of LinkedIn connections, right, you got 500, 1,000, 5,000, I don't care what the number is,
Mhm.
one of the days of your week when you're focused on prospecting, right, in different categories,
Mhm.
your goal should be to get someone who you're connected to on LinkedIn to be connected to you on Instagram, right? That doesn't mean follow them. And we'll talk about that in a second. But it does mean, hey, I'm connected to James on LinkedIn, but am I connected to him on Instagram? Now, why? Why? Like think thought process for a second, or like the psychological aspect of that. What
Yeah.
you said before this is what James is posting on LinkedIn is different than what James is posting on Instagram, right?
Correct.
So the James on Instagram is my son hit his first home run in his first ever high school baseball game,
Yeah.
right? Holy crap, incredible, right? But that's
Yeah.
going to go on Instagram with a very special, proud dad message. On
Hmm.
LinkedIn, you might post that video that you shared with me. You might post
Hmm.
that same video with an analogy or some form of leadership strategy or thought process or
Hmm.
mindset behind it, which the mindset part, right, being that your son, instead of even though he knew the ball was going to go and become a home run, he
Hmm.
still busted his ass around all four bases to make sure that he got in and got the score for his team.
Right.
Some people, some baseball players, even some people in our life, how symbolic of that, or how symbolic is that of how a lot of people treat things? Oh, well, I know this is a home run. I'm taking my foot off the gas. Right? But again,
Hmm.
different content or same content with different messaging. So the
Yep.
James on LinkedIn is this mindset thought leader. The James on Instagram, I'm now connecting to him as a parent, as someone
Yes.
who loves sports and loves the fact that my kid is in sports and that your kid is in sports. You have a son, I have a son. Like we have this connection point on this personal thing. So how my loan officers are prospecting on Instagram
Hmm.
should be with the intention of I'm creating this authentic connection with this real estate agent or
Hmm.
with this other vendor partner, or if you're in leadership and you're on Instagram, right? Your goal should be to create a genuine connection as a
Hmm.
human being with another human being. Because guess what? We do human things, right?
Hmm.
Whereas on LinkedIn, right, we're going a little bit more hardcore mindset side of things, leadership quality, like how does someone have to embody this thought or this daily action to be able to create this outcome that we're after.
Yep.
So two things, and I want to go back to you on this, but two things. Number one, if you're a loan officer on LinkedIn trying to prospect an agent, you have to think about it from a perspective of you're recruiting or trying to manage grabbing an entire team or an office, right? Like maybe a bigger presence, trying to become a more unique offering or try to make it a
Hmm.
more unique offering. But the best way to do that is who are you connected to? Who is
Hmm.
your lever point, right? Who are
Hmm.
the people that you share in common that you have a really good relationship with that then in turn you can name drop in the message when you send it to said team leader or send it to said, agent that has 75 agents underneath him or her, right? So again, thought process. Now, if you're prospecting them on Instagram, what's the first thing you should be doing? Finding something that they've posted that you can relate to, that there's some form of connection with on a personal level, and
Yep.
you're starting a relationship with someone one to one on a personal level. Different.
Yep.
Same, but different.
Exactly. And two things that really jump to mind is that the strategy on LinkedIn is actually remarkably similar to what you just described for Instagram, because if you are, let's say you have whatever resource you use in order to gauge the volume of realtors in the production of realtors in your market, and you've identified like your list of 20 the 20 real estate brokerages that you want to really target and really get embedded with. Then what you do is you go find those people on the platforms that you were just describing. So what you just described as the process for Instagram, absolutely spot on 100%. Same thing for LinkedIn. Go find them and go find their profiles, and don't worry about the fact that LinkedIn will say, "Hey, Michelle Berman Michael viewed your profile." Don't worry about that, because a lot of people are like, well, I don't want them to see that. Well, screw that. I mean, that's part of the platform. And
Yeah.
also it gives them it actually gives them a warm introduction, like, oh, this guy James Duncan checked out my profile. Who's he? How many times have you done that when you see somebody viewed your profile?
So
How many
many.
times have you clicked on that notification to go find out who it is that's looking at you? And so it's there's a I kind of happen to like that. So then you go to their profile and then you scroll down a little bit and you can look at their posts, their comments, and their reactions and any articles that they posted. And you'll be able to tell really quick, is this a platform that they heavily engage in? If they have if it says that they haven't posted any comments yet, or if it says they haven't made any posts or something, that's a pretty good telltale sign that they're not going to see your stuff that gets put on LinkedIn because they don't engage with the platform. They just have a profile. However, if you see them, and this is the same strategy that you can employ that you were just describing from Instagram, if you see that they are very active in posting, go check out their posts. If it's something noteworthy, make a comment. Don't just make some kind of banal comment like "good advice" or "well said" or and then disappear. Have I like what Jim Rome has said in the past on his radio sports talk show. Have a take and don't suck, and basically have something insightful to contribute to the conversation. That's what LinkedIn is for. Instagram, do the hearts and the emojis and the this is awesome and wow and LOL. Do all that on Instagram. That's fine. But LinkedIn, you really have to get intentional with how you comment and engage with other people's content. So
I would say Instagram, you have to spend a little more time than the LOLs or the hearts and the likes now, right? I
sure.
think to your point before, I started in the Instagram game in 2014. I've seen an enormous amount of change in the 10 years that I've been doing this or working this platform. And what I can
Hmm.
tell you is that I don't respond to that stuff. If all you're going to do is heart my story or all you're going to do is thumbs up something, or if all you're going to do is say great video on a piece of content I posted, I'm not responding to that. And
Right.
there's a handful of reasons for that. Number one, I can tell that in most cases, depending on the account that I'm looking at, it wasn't you. Second thing,
Yeah.
how long did that take you? And if you're saying great video, okay, well, it was a 90-second video. There was a really intentional and very thought out caption that I wrote with the video. So did you listen to it? Did you read it? And if
Hmm.
all you're saying is great video, to me, that's all you're making time for as far as, creating a comment and don't make it suck. You made it
Hmm.
suck because you didn't think that it was important enough to create a genuine engagement with someone.
Hmm.
So the
I
other
made
thing is, go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just
Yeah.
something popped in my head right then. I made a post a few months ago on LinkedIn where I asked the question, "Did you have a good day today or a bad day?" And the rest of it, and it was a couple of paragraphs long, so you had to click the see more in order to see the rest of the post. And it was I was relaying a story about I had a rough day at work that particular day. So it was one of those days where just things were 10 times as hard as they should have been, and stuff was getting delayed and all the kind of stuff. It was not my optimal day. And I talked briefly about that. And then I talked about my wife getting home from the hospital. And you know this about you've met Delana. She's a cath lab nurse at a regional hospital, pretty close to where we live. And so she's working on people who are actively trying to die, having a heart attack. And despite all their best efforts this particular day, they were not able to save this one particular patient who died of a heart attack. And I mean, they did everything that they could, but sometimes, despite their best efforts, that happens. It's part of the job. And I can always tell when it doesn't happen often, fortunately, because she's very good at her job. But when it does happen, I can always tell as soon as she walks through the door.
Mm.
And her face was down and her voice was quiet, and I knew something had happened. And so I stopped what I was doing and just gave her a hug because she takes those things really hard. And I mean, I can't imagine having to go through that on a daily basis, but I know that in my day, nobody died. So the whole post was about perspective and about whether or not like let's instead of taking your frustrations out on somebody else who didn't deserve it, let's have a little bit of perspective about what it is that we're actually doing on a daily basis compared to what somebody like my wife is doing on a daily basis and the problems that she's solving for people. My day pales in comparison to the day that she had. Okay, so that's a long story set up the post. Somebody I'm connected to, their comment was two words: great day! Exclamation mark. I know that person did not click expand and read the post. That person did not get any reaction, and I thought long and hard about unfriending that person or unconnecting with that person on LinkedIn because I was kind of ticked. I was
Yeah.
like, listen, I just told you a very important story. You read one line and gave me an answer. It's not what I'm here.
Yeah. And I mean, what else do you even have to say about that? That was like the perfect possible example, honestly,
Yeah.
of the good and the bad of prospecting through these platforms. And I think two thoughts that I have on my in my brain here on this. Prospecting is not about us, it's about them.
Yep.
And it's about the person that we're trying to connect with. And I think that there's a handful of pieces to prospecting successfully. And some of the best opportunities I've ever landed through, whether that's Instagram or LinkedIn, just this most recent one that you're privy to the information that I'm experiencing right now, but
Hmm.
it was through LinkedIn, right? And how?
Hmm.
I'm sorry, it was through Instagram. I had a really good one last week with LinkedIn, but this one in particular that you and I had talked about offline was through
Hmm.
Instagram. And this particular person didn't respond to my message the first day that I sent it. And that was okay. Like, I mean, I would have expected a sooner or faster response, but he didn't. And it was okay. He got back to me the second day. But he said to me, he said, Michelle, You have no idea how many messages I get every day from people that want to, quote, get on a call with me. And when I read your message, the reason I didn't respond very quickly was I was absolutely shocked at how intentional that message that you sent me was. And he's like, I went and looked, I did my due diligence. I went and looked at all of our mutual connections. He named like 7 or 8 people. He's like, you know this person, you know this person. And then he's like, I'll tell you even one thing. I called this person to make sure that the person you name dropped in the message to me actually knew you.
Hmm.
And I was like, hell yeah, please do. Right? Because
Hmm.
to me, when I prospect and I'm intentionally sending a message to someone with the intent of getting an opportunity out of that,
Hmm.
what am I doing? My favorite word in the English dictionary is leverage. My job is to create leverage for myself. And our mutual friend Ryan, I'm sorry, Renee Rodriguez, right, says ethos, right?
Yeah.
Build your ethos, and does your ethos match mine? And he even said, he's like, I mean, crap, you're playing in all the same circles I'm in, and I had never heard of you. How? And to me, the best form of affirmation I could ever receive is that he actually called the person I name dropped. And so for me, I will tell you, and if I'm coaching you or if James is coaching you on this, guys, whoever you're name dropping, you better be so wildly confident in that relationship, because that is where we are in, or where we are in 2025. We are at this
Hmm.
point where people are going to get hundreds and hundreds of messages on a monthly basis if you're in a position of influence or a position of opportunity to give someone else an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
If you're the president of a mortgage company, you don't think that you're going to get a message from someone saying, hey, I want to get in front of your audience every single day? Of course you are, right? So how
Hmm.
is your message different than John Doe's message that is getting sent daily? And to me, how you win is your ability to create leverage and your ability to do it in a way that you're so wildly confident in that I know I'm going to get a response. Even if they say no, I still know I'm going to get a response.
Absolutely.
Crazy, right? I mean, it's
Very.
crazy. So, I will tell you, James, I think, we need like 2.5 more hours at least. We need a Sean
Easily.
Ryan. We need a Sean Ryan episode or podcast. If anyone's not familiar with Sean Ryan, his podcast episodes last an average of 2 to 5 hours. Um,
Or Joe Rogan's right here in Austin. Maybe we can borrow his studio because his team is
yeah.
used to that.
Oh my gosh, I loved the Sean Ryan podcast, and one of my favorite episodes was legit 5 hours. And my husband and I listened to the entire episode while driving home from Florida, and you would never have even known it was 5 hours. It was just so good and
That's
pure gold
awesome.
all the way through. But I think you and I need more time. We're gonna have a part two without a doubt.
Yeah.
But James, I want to be a good steward of the time that you've given us and the people who have been listening to us. I
Hmm.
promise you I will bring James back. But James, what do you have going on that someone can get dialed into, and what's the best way for us to connect with you?
Best way to connect with me is find me on LinkedIn, and because that's where I'm most active. Most of the time, if I'm ever on any of the other platforms, I'm on there doom scrolling, and you're not going to see me post a whole lot of content out there. It's just I'm in this world all day, every day, doing what I do, and so the last thing that I want to do is spend my afternoons and evenings creating content for multiple different platforms because I've already done that for other people throughout the course of the day, but just hit me up on LinkedIn. Go search for me. If you look for James Duncan, there's a whole bunch of people named James Duncan. I'm the only one that whose title reads SVP of Marketing and Engagement at Lower. You can also find me if you see the mortgage teacher in the URL, you're with the right James Duncan. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, connect with me there. If you send me a connection request, drop a note that you heard this on Michelle's podcast, and so that will be a great way to establish some credibility that you're not somebody from the Philippines who's just trying to sell me virtual assistant services.
Yes, for sure. And James, I appreciate you. What a special friendship we have. And
Agreed.
honestly, it feels like it's just getting started, even though it's been at least a good solid year, I think now. But
Yeah,
um,
easily.
so much more to come from both you and I and us together, hopefully, is my prayer for sure.
Sure.
But until the next time, guys, thank you for joining this episode of the Coffee and Questions podcast. Please go connect with James, and we'll see you in the next one.
Awesome.